Welcome to our fourth episode of Interruption of the Han Dynasty by Wang Mang, Establishment of the Xin Dynasty. Let's begin our new episode. History has rarely witnessed a political gamble as daring or as catastrophic as the moment when Wang Mang attempted to rewrite China's destiny. But what followed after his fall, after the flames consumed Chang'an and the Xin Dynasty crumbled, is a story just as remarkable. A story of broken empires, roaming rebel armies, desperate claimants, and a quiet, brilliant survivor who would ultimately rebuild the Han world from the ashes. This is the final chapter in the saga of China's greatest political interruption. This is the rise of the Eastern Han. The ruins of Chang'an still smoked as rebel factions poured across the fallen capital. The red eyebrows, flushed with victory and painted with their signature crimson markings, celebrated the end of Wang Mang's rule with chaotic abandon. They looted storehouses, torched palaces, and tore apart the remnants of the Xin government. In their eyes, justice was roughly proportional to the suffering they had endured, and they made no effort to restrain themselves. But victory would not make them rulers. While the rebels feasted on the spoils of the capital, the newly declared Gengshi Emperor Liu Xuan discovered the truth that would haunt every Han claimant. A throne restored by rebels is never truly secure. His authority was fragile, dependent not on loyalty, but on the temporary enthusiasm of armies who believed they alone had freed the world from tyranny. And across the ravaged countryside, different rebel groups fought not for unity, but for survival, territory, and ideology. The empire had fractured into shards, and each shard glittered with ambition. The Lulin still roamed the south. The red eyebrows controlled the east. Independent warlords carved out their own pockets of influence, and distant corners of the empire no longer recognized any ruler at all. Even as the Han banner rose again, heaven's mandate was undecided. In the midst of this turmoil, one figure observed quietly, calculating each shift in the balance of power with careful eyes: Liu Shu. He had fought alongside the Gengshi Emperor and had seen firsthand how rebellion could topple dynasties. But unlike the charismatic Liu Yan, his brother, who had rallied thousands with fiery speeches, Liu Shu did not rely on spectacle. He relied on patience. He watched as the Gengshi Emperor made mistake after mistake. Instead of unifying the rebels, the new emperor showered his followers with lavish titles and rewards, creating rivalries where unity was desperately needed. He relied too heavily on the Lulin rebels, whose internal divisions weakened the new government. And worst of all, he underestimated the red eyebrows, believing they would accept his authority now that a Han claimant sat on the throne. They did not. The red eyebrows believed that heaven itself had chosen them. In their visions and prophecies, they saw divine signs hidden in the color of their war paint, in the shape of clouds over the battlefield, even in the strange patterns left behind by receding floodwaters. When they looked at the Gengshi Emperor, they did not see the chosen son of heaven. They saw a pretender. Within a year of Wang Mang's death, the rebels who had brought down a dynasty were turning against the emperor they had installed. Their armies marched west, unstoppable in numbers and impossible to control. They demanded food, reward, protection, things the struggling Han government could not give. The Han emperor fled Chang'an. The capital, once more, collapsed into chaos. At this moment, when the dynasty he nominally served was buckling under its own weight, Liu Shu made his move. He did not raise his banner with fanfare. He did not declare himself emperor. Instead, he built his legitimacy step by step, region by region, forging alliances not through fear, but through gratitude. His strategy was deceptively simple: restore order. He reopened granaries and protected villages. He disciplined his troops and forbade looting. He negotiated rather than threatened. As famine, war, and rebel violence swept across China, his territory became a rare refuge of stability. People flocked to him not because he demanded their allegiance, but because he had earned it. It was a quiet revolution, but a powerful one. While Liu Shu ascended through careful statecraft, the Gengshi emperor spiraled downward. His authority was flanked by rebels he could not dismiss and generals he could not trust. When the Red Eyebrows entered Chang'an in AD 25, the city surrendered without resistance. The emperor, who had once marched with the confidence of heaven's representative, was captured, humiliated, and executed. The dream of the restored Han seemed ready to die once more. But destiny had been waiting for someone else. As factions battled across the land, Liu Shu stepped into the vacuum. Supported by loyal generals such as Deng Yu and Wu Han, he pushed northward and eastward, reclaiming territory that had fallen into rebel hands. His troops fought with discipline unseen since the fall of the Western Han. They respected the people, protected trade routes, repaired irrigation systems, and won the trust of entire provinces. By the spring of AD 25, with momentum clearly on his side, Liu Shu finally accepted what many had been urging him to claim, the mandate of heaven. He issued a decree announcing the restoration of the Han Dynasty, not as a continuation of the Gengshi emperor's failed regime, but as a new beginning, a second Han, a rebirth. The Eastern Han Dynasty had begun. Across the war-torn empire, responses varied. Some warlords resisted, others submitted peacefully. Many rebels, exhausted by years of famine and conflict, gladly accepted a ruler who promised stable governance rather than constant plunder. The Red Eyebrows, once a force feared across China, found themselves cornered. Liu Shu offered them mercy in exchange for surrender, an offer no tyrant would have given. They laid down their weapons. The Lulin, too fractured to mount a resistance, faded into history. Small pockets of Xin loyalists were swept aside, and slowly, under Liu Shu's leadership, the Han Dynasty stitched itself back together like a wounded giant healing from a mortal blow. But even in triumph, the memory of Wang Mang lingered across the ages. To some, he remained a tragic visionary, a reformer whose ideas were ahead of their time, who understood that China needed structured land reform and social welfare long before such concepts root took. To others, he was a tyrant who hid ambition behind morality, destabilizing a centuries-old dynasty through arrogance and idealism. And to many ordinary people, he was simply the man whose experiments plunged the empire into nearly 2 decades of suffering. Time would transform his image again and again. Scholars of later dynasties argued over him endlessly. Was he a Confucian idealist in the wrong era? A usurper masquerading as a sage? A philosopher king who believed too deeply in the power of ritual to fix a broken world? The truth is likely buried somewhere between these extremes. And so the Xin Dynasty passed into history, not as a new era, but as a fracture, a pause, an interruption. A reminder that even the strongest empires can be undone not just by enemies, but by the weight of their own ideals. As the Eastern Han rose to prominence, rebuilding the foundations of Chinese civilization, the story of Wang Mang remained a haunting echo across the ages. His fall demonstrated the limits of political engineering. His reforms, though innovative, proved that change forced too quickly can bring collapse rather than renewal. And his death in the burning palace of Chang'an symbolized the tragic fate of leaders who believe vision alone can hold an empire together. But his legacy was not entirely lost. Centuries later, scholars would examine his policies with fresh eyes, finding wisdom hidden beneath the chaos. Economists would study his attempt at currency stabilization. Historians would compare him to reformers across the world who sought to reshape societies by reaching backward into idealized pasts. And storytellers like us, would return to his life again and again, because it serves as a timeless warning. When a ruler tries to change the world faster than the world is willing to change itself, destiny becomes unpredictable, rebellion becomes inevitable, and even heaven may appear silent. But out of ruin, new dynasties rise. Out of darkness, order can return. And from the ashes of Wang Mang's fallen vision, a young man with patience and humility rebuilt the Han Dynasty into one of the most enduring empires in human history. But the story does not end with restoration. New threats waited beyond China's borders. New factions formed within the palace walls, and the Eastern Han, though reborn, faced challenges that would shake the dynasty for generations. That next chapter will be told soon. Dear viewers, thank you all for watching our 4th episode. The 5th episode will be uploaded very soon. Please stay tuned, subscribe, like, comment, and share to encourage us.